A huge shift is taking place today, right now, and if we're not aware of it, we're going to be sideswiped by it. Let me tell you, the first thing we need to look at is what's happening with the new order. This is so important because it's going to affect everybody in many ways, not just one, okay? The second thing I want to talk about is the layoffs and the economy and how this all comes together, so let's begin. I'm going to show you several articles here that kind of summarize what we're talking about. But essentially what we are seeing is, along with the BRICS nations, we have noticed other countries that have come towards China and said, we want to do business. We do not like the current system and we want to go away from it. So let us join the BRICS. Let us be a partner. Let's have these economic aspects between the two of us that are mutually beneficial. Qatar and China make history with a 27-year LNG supply deal. I had told you about this previously, that Qatar went to Europe and said, hey, we'll do a deal, but guess what? It doesn't open until 2026. So that is not going to come online for Europe for years, and that's if everything goes okay. So Qatar obviously wants to do business. They want to sell what they have. This is apparently the biggest resource for LNG coming out of Qatar, okay? So that's something that I think people should be aware of, but it's not just Europe. They're supplying China as well. This just shows us this is the first long-term SPA from the NFE project to be announced, and it marks the longest gas supply agreement in the history of the LNG industry. All I'm trying to say here is that it's big. It's very big. And China has been going not just to Qatar, but look at what they've been doing with Saudi. Hey, Saudi, we want to partner. We want to do this. Saudi is saying, hey, we would love to be part of the BRICS nations. The BRICS have said specifically, we are working on a reserve currency. Now, you might say the US is not going to deal with that currency. The UK might not deal with that currency. Australia, Canada, maybe they want nothing to do with that currency. But guess what? All of the countries inside of the BRICS nations, they want to deal with that currency because they don't have to worry about devaluation. They don't want to have to worry about sanctions and all these different things. They can do it on their own terms, And that's what's happening here today, right now. World's most crucial fuel heads for shortage, touching everything. I had brought this up in previous videos before, but we are talking about diesel. It's used to power trucks, fuel machinery, and to heat homes. They've surged 50% amid shrinking inventories and strained export market. So there are certain places, obviously, they're going to be hit harder than others. We see that all the time. But this happens to be just one aspect, and certainly this is going to affect the prices that people pay. But when you look at it on a deeper level, these commodities here, we have been very clear about the fact that we need more supply, or we need the supply chain in some way to not be broken down, essentially. There are many aspects here. No fuel is more essential to the global economy than diesel. It powers trucks, buses, ships, and trains. It drives the machinery for the construction, manufacturing, and farming. It's burned for heating homes. And with the high price of natural gas in some places, it's also being used to generate power. They go on. But of course, throughout this period, we need to just be aware of where our supply comes from. Is this the most strategic place? Does it make sense? Or was it just cheap? Was it just easy? Sometimes we do things and we don't really ask why. Why are we getting our stuff from there and is the only supplier of that? Why aren't we seeking out a better supplier or another supplier just as a backup? These things need to be asked right now, okay? We went through 2 years of craziness in the supply chain. Why aren't we trying to fix these things? Why aren't we using that as an opportunity to say, maybe where we're doing business isn't the best place? Russia's supply shock forces rethink for chemicals and fertilizer groups. Shutdowns, shortages, and surging prices are prompting calls for a more resilient food system. So obviously, when you look at fertilizer, a lot of that coming from Russia. Secondarily, you see, you need natural gas to get these different fertilizers to the market. If they don't have that, well, then you're going to be either seeking out a different location, you're going to be paying more, I mean, one way, shape, or form, okay? The war in Ukraine is wreaking havoc on the global supply chains. Western sanctions in response to the invasion, price shocks resulting from Russia's weaponization of energy, and disruptions in goods to shipments have punctured normal procurement practices. The reverberations are being felt across the span of the global industries, but the effects on the chemical and agribusiness sectors have been particularly severe. So this is just what we are dealing with now, and it doesn't look like it's going to be resolved anytime soon. As a result of that, we see fragmentation. Of course, when things are running smoothly, the countries on both sides are happy. You get your money, you get your commodity, both sides are happy, they shake hands, everything. But when there's a disruption there, it starts to create tension between both sides. And certainly that is very evident today. Now, I wasn't going to include this, but I did. China thought to be stockpiling gold to cut greenback dependence. Central banks are snapping up gold this year, but it's uncertain which ones are behind most of that shopping spree, fueling speculation that China is a big player. I've heard of this over and over and over again, that China is the one. China is the one buying it all up. They've got 20,000 tons of gold. Jim Rickards has talked about this. Others have as well. We don't really know. They're not coming forward that amount. I personally do not think that that's the case, okay? I think if they're going to be buying it, they're going to be letting everybody know that they're going to be buying it. They're not going to hide that. That's my personal opinion, and we will not know until the time comes. There is a speculation that they want to, in fact, back their currency by gold. I don't know. With all the money printing that they've done, it would be quite intense. Are the BRICS nations going to do that? I mean, there's so many questions here. The fact is, this is being reported. We don't know if that's the case. I want to know what you think. Is China backing or wanting or desiring to back their currency with gold? Not what you heard. What do you think? Let me know. All right. EU fertilizer sector is at a crossroads amid world multiple crises. So this is what's happening, and Europe's feeling the brunt of that. I believe on the other end, you look at this like an east and west formation right now, and it seems to be very clear that there's a battle going on between the two in so many different ways, okay? I just see this as the new order and the old. And you look at it historically, what happens? Countries go to war. And we're just hoping that cooler heads will prevail in this situation, okay? Carriers are in panic mode as recession bites, offering crazy ocean rates. So that's one article, and then I also wanted to show you this. Somebody suggested that I was talking about the fact that the rates had come down substantially. They said no. That's not true. I'm just showing you the data. Yes, it is true. The only one that has gone up when we're looking at container freight rates, by the way, I made that clear in that video. So it's Rotterdam to New York. That one has gone up still, but pretty much everything else has gone down. So it depends on what you're shipping. It depends on how you're shipping. If you're using air shipping, are you using sea, are you using rail, or are you using trucks? Like what is the method? For me in my business, I haven't really noticed differences in the costs. So that's just the way it goes. So and all the way through. Okay, so that's just the way it goes. So that's the freight. All of this adding up. Imagine the costs that you pay for just about everything having risen. Certainly, it's going to have an impact on you, the individual, what you can buy and what your neighbors can buy, and the economy as a whole around you. Now, I want to talk about what's happening with the layoffs here because it is substantial, and I want to start with that to show you the layoffs tracker. Now, I've been quoting the number of 120,000. It's gone way beyond that. 137,000 in 2022. And so, you can look at the companies. And by the way, I was surprised to see, you can actually click on a list of employees, see their names, and see their email addresses, see their LinkedIn profiles and everything else. But what we can see right here is that many people have been laid off, and it's not just one industry. Okay, look at the examples. Media layoffs spike amid recession fears. HP to cut 6,000 jobs over 3 years as PC demand falters. There are so many examples. I don't know what's going to happen in the next little while because it's, percentage wise, it's not that significant. But you tell that to the people who've been laid off. I believe that they're going to have to disagree with you that it's not significant. It just depends on the company. Ultimately, a lot of them are the ones that were, high flying during 2020. Corporate defaults would more than double, even in a mild recession. That's according to S&P Global. You got to understand what's happening here because of the debt that these companies have taken on. Remember, it is very clear that with the debt, the expense that people, nations, corporations that have incurred over this period because of the higher interest rates, well, then they're going to be paying a lot more. And some of them just can't afford it. They have to go bankrupt. Whether that is, your local area takes on debt too, right? They have expenses. They need to pay this off. But if the debt is becoming more expensive, then they can't. So these are the things that are happening right now before us. Corporations are, a lot of times they are considered to be junk. So that junk is something that a lot of these companies right now, they might be saying, I don't want to touch that. So nobody's buying it up. And as a result, you got a big problem, okay? Investors' home purchases dropped 30% as price increases slow down. So the investors are kind of stepping back. They're saying, no, thank you. I'm not going to do a 7% mortgage. I don't want any part of that, especially if you're not going to an A lender. Maybe you got to go to a B lender. That's even more expensive. I think it's really just expected when you see these parts of the cycle. I've brought this cycle up 1,000 times before, and so that's where we're at. Now, I don't know what's going on with the media, but the thought that, there's so much money sitting on the sidelines, it's ridiculous. Look at the personal savings rate, okay? Savings rate has been declining, and this chart goes back to 2016. It's lower than throughout that entire period, okay? The savings aren't there. And is it a surprise that credit card usage is absolutely through the roof? People haven't been able to save the cash, and so they have to use their credit cards. Their credit cards at 18+% interest rates. Do you see what's happening here? Do you look at this? The West doesn't have a chance. In the long term, the West doesn't have a chance. You, the individual, must take care of yourself because the safety net is not going to be there. U.S. households' debt repayments are at an all-time high. Your neighbors, your families, your friends, everybody around you are now paying more for their repayments. Household annual debt repayments now over $1.75 trillion at the end of quarter two. It just shows you how expensive suddenly that debt has become because of interest rates rising higher. This means people will not have the disposable income and they're going to be burdened as soon as they're laid off. So if they can keep away from the layoffs, it might be okay, but doesn't look like that's going to be the case in some areas. The UK economy is lagging substantially behind other developed nations. The UK is in a very bad position, and hopefully that will be able to change in the near future, but not looking promising, okay? Because if inflation is just hammering the UK right now. Britain's austerity budget had a massive hole, which will hurt growth, according to a former Bank of England official. The changes that have happened in the last few years for the UK have been quite big, to say the least, and it doesn't look like they're going to be able to just pump up the money there because guess what? Massive inflation. Oh, we want to do this and we want to modify this and we want to do yield curve control and we want to print money and do the quantitative easing thing and reduce interest rates, but then increase interest rates and all this nonsense. They can't even figure out what they want to do because they've never had to deal with this before. The severe shock that's being experienced right now in the financial system is not understood because we've never really had to deal with this type of cycle. Think about this. You've increased interest rates now at a level that is reasonable, but to a system that was so used to all of this nonsense of super low interest rates for so long, money printing, everything. And now you're going to go around and try to actually, increase, tighten it up. It's not going to be good. They've never been dealing with something like this before. Yes, they've had high interest rates, but the cycle before, think of what happened before and lead us up into this moment here. This is devastating. You, the individual, get prepared, get your finances in order, take on a second job if you have to, start a business on the side, plant a garden, learn how to do new things, new skills. Your entertainment should be reading books. Your entertainment should not be, the Netflix and all that stuff, okay? Because we need to learn, we need to adapt to the new world. This is what's happening today, and if we're not smart about it, we're going to be left behind. I hope that message resonates with you. If you want more, hit that subscribe. I'll see you tomorrow.